friends. Today I wanted to talk to you about reframing your relationship with your past self. I don't know about you, but for me, making peace with some things that have happened in the past, some experiences, some decisions I made, some ways I've behaved, it's it's been pretty difficult. And my tendency so far has been to sort of bury my head in the sand or to block the whole thing out completely and say that I'm going to lock you in a locker and that's it. I'm not going to think about you anymore. And I find that it's not effective. And I'd really love to start having a more appreciative and compassionate relationship with my past self. And to that end, I was thinking about a few reframes that I could use, and I found that some of them were pretty interesting, and I want to share them with you today. The first one is, what if you did the best you could with the resources you had at that point? And if I pose that question to myself, what if all those times that I felt I was acting like a buffoon, or that I made terrible choices, or that life treated me badly and I had experiences that were so distasteful, what if all those times my past self was doing the best she could? Uh, that sort of made me feel appreciative about my past self because, with the resources she had at that point, she made the best choice she could. If she had been in a different frame of mind, or if her experiences until that point had taught her differently, then she would have made completely different choices. So to recognize that I I wasn't being lazy at any given point in time, and the past Ranjana, she was just doing the best she could, makes me feel like a sense of relief and makes me feel a little, even a little proud of her, because I feel like when I frame it that way, I recognize that she wasn't being lazy. She wasn't being intentionally, yeah, bad towards her life in a way. She was just doing the best she could, you know. The second reframe that came to mind was, and this is something that I learned in one of Paul Sheely's paraliminals. I can't recall which one though, but it basically goes this way. Look at a situation that happened where you feel you didn't do well and ask yourself, how come I did it as well as I did it? Why didn't I do it in a worse way? What Let's say, for example, that if you took a particular situation or experience in your past, and on a scale of 1 to 10 you rate it as a 3, why was it a 3? Why not a 2, 1, or 0? So that's the question you pose yourself. And when I pose the question to myself, what comes to mind is that, yeah, like, how come I didn't allow the situation to become worse? I must have done something right. My whole stance to the way I acted in any given situation changes. For example, one of the things I cringe about when it comes to my past is the extreme levels of anxiety I had in the past. For example, when I was doing my MBA, I used to have panic attacks on a daily basis, and my roommate and a couple of close friends would tell me that they saw me thrashing around in my bed every night. And sometimes the anxiety would get so bad that I'd feel like I would sit like a ball on the bed and clutch my chest because I would I would be trying to physically try to control my breathing and trying to make myself feel better. So I have a sort of resentment towards that phase of my life. I'm a little angry that I even allowed myself to become so anxious. I feel like, Ranjana, if you had not been that anxious at that point, then you know you wouldn't have had to deal with anxiety now after all these years. But when I pose the question to myself, how come that situation wasn't worse than it was? Like it could have been a lot worse, right? Like people even end their lives when they find that it's getting a little too difficult, or it can turn into worse forms of like mental disorders and stuff. But none of that happened to me. It remained at a severe case of anxiety. And when I saw that phase of my life from that lens, I was like, I must have done stuff that was good, that was intelligent, that was smart. And when I really thought about it, that turned out to be true, because I remember having conversations with my friends about how I was feeling. I remembered like reading a lot of material online to put myself in a different frame of mind. I remember taking long walks. I remember burying myself in novels and stuff. And somehow I got through those 2 years in MBA that felt like hell, but I did get through them, and that sort of put me on a different path. I could have, decided that I wouldn't get through MBA. I would come back home and live this life of not wanting to face life. And I did not do that. I actually said that, you know what, this sucks, but let me get through it. And just that decision was like, it made all the difference. So even though those 2 years were 3 out of 10 for me, I did not allow them to be a one or even a zero. So yeah, that just made me feel better about Ranjana 10 years ago or like 8 years ago. And I'm glad. The final reframe that I was toying with today was the lens of a story, or you could even say that it's a spiritual lens. What if I was meant to take that path? What if my journey was meant to go in all those meandering ways? What if all those troughs that happened were meant to be there, were meant to happen? And I'd encourage you to like pose that question to yourself, because when you see things that way, you realize that there's more meaning to those incidents or experiences than just it sucks. I feel like all experiences, whether good or bad, sort of give definition to our journey, to our path. And that's what makes it so unique. And when I view my life from that lens, I'm like, yeah, even all those times that was so shitty actually makes my story pretty unique and pretty interesting. And I am who I am today because of all the things that happened to me. And in fact, instead of looking at it as to me, I can actually look at them as for me, because they defined the character I became, the path I took, the decisions I made, like everything. And I am who I am today because of all the things that happened, the good, bad, and the ugly. Like a summation of all the decisions I made and all the experiences I had. And there's some beauty in that. There is definitely something to be appreciated. Anyway, I'll stop now. That was my 3 reframes that I was playing with today. I hope that was interesting to you and If you have any interesting reframes to make peace with your past self, I would love to hear them. So do share, and as always, thank you for watching.